there's been a lot of really interesting research that the difference between somebody who's suffered a lot, who becomes a compassionate, active, generous, making a difference human being in their adulthood, and somebody who is destroyed by it. It's just one or two people who are able to see that person in their suffering. Even if they can't change their suffering in any way, they know that they're being seen and loved in it. So where we've come to in our understanding of that is we can do that for anyone at any time. What's needed for that transformation of suffering into compassion is support, is resource. It doesn't take that much support and resource to get somebody moving in a direction where that can grow.
Yakov, thank you for your time. Welcome to the show, and I'm so grateful to have your time before you go away tomorrow to explore your incredible work and shamanic healing and true embodiment, so we can actually step into our authenticity and not just learning through through words and through the way we've been trained through schooling. I would love to hear from you well, firstly, just a quick, how did you become interested in this, living in the UK? And
yeah it's a good question. I started reading Carlos Castaneda's works when I was in my late teens. That was very, very fascinating. I was very much involved in that. I call it, from this point of view where I am now, I call it the anti-everything movement. And I was a little bit of a young anarchist. I didn't wear shoes for 2 years. I was doing a lot of non-violent, direct peace action work, which was all really, really good and appropriate for the time. And basically, I was at a nuclear submarine base up in Scotland at about 3 o'clock in the morning, chopping through a fence. As you used to do.
As you do.
And I was chopping this fence, and I just had the feeling, this really strong feeling, that though the fence was clearly outside me, it was also clearly inside me. And so that was, and I got arrested that night. And so I got to spend 4 days in a police cell in Maryhill Police Station in Glasgow, which is not the kindest of places. And I was sitting watching a wall for 4 days because there was nothing else to do. And then in my early 20s, as I was going on, like exploring what does that mean that the fence is inside me, I also got hit by lightning and on a golf course.
Jesus.
And that was a real hard slap across the face. There's no other way of describing it. It was bang, Yakov. Remember, like, you're here for a short time. You remember from that. When I got hit, it was almost like a sense of a flood of memory from childhood. Not so much difficult experiences, but more, I think, the kind of experiences that a lot of children have that's very natural. A sense of connection to the imaginal world in a very strong way. Like, we call it imaginary friends, but in the shamanic world, we might call those spirits. But it was, so I remembered all of those things that I'd experienced as a child, like talking to my great grandmother after she died. These things which as a child you don't really think of until people start to tell you, oh, this is strange, this is odd, this is not real. And because as a teenager I'd wanted to fit in, I kind of, pushed it all to the side. But with that lightning strike, it all came back literally in a flash. And I was happy to be alive, and it was my first meeting with death and with mortality. Like, I could be dead, maybe I should be dead, but I seem to be fine. And so that led me to really start seeking out teachers or understandings for what had been a natural point of view for me, was now alive in me again. And I was very lucky that at that time in England there was a lot of people visiting from Native American traditions, from the Cherokee people, from the Lakota people, and they were bringing teachings not so that we could become like them, but rather because they recognized, these people, that we'd come a very long way away from a sense of connection to the living earth under our feet, to the cycles of life. And we developed this extraordinary mind capacity, but that this extraordinary mind capacity was very disconnected from the heart and the body. And so I did a lot of work with those guys, like, all kinds of sweat lodges and all kinds of ceremonies, which were very challenging in many ways, and particularly challenging because, I had grown up, like most of us, in a world where the rational was king. And those ceremonies challenged that hierarchy of intelligence and were really inviting us to open more of a sense of perceiving through the body and through the heart. And so that was quite confusing. And it was amazing and confusing and confronting, and very helpful as well, just to open those doors. And then my great fortune was to meet Gabrielle Roth when I was very young. And Gabrielle Roth was she called herself an urban shaman. And, she had beautiful clothes, and she lived in New York, and she was a wild, theatrical, unpredictable creature. And her whole thing was, shamanism is indigenous to its own culture. And yeah, for sure, we can learn, and we've been very blessed, and we continue to be blessed to learn from people from different traditions. But in the end, you have to bring what you learn back to your own body, to your own people, to your own land, to the culture and the time you live in. And her great understanding and her great contribution was that the wounding for most of us who've grown up in the industrial world was we lost contact with the body. And so the best way to get back was rhythm, repetition, really good music, and to sweat, and to move your body until your mind quietened down. And so myself and my wife, Susanna, we spent 18 years working with her. And during that time, a whole lot of other things, like crazy experience, happened with meeting shamans from other cultures, particularly somebody called Bikumatis Penta, who was a Sami shaman, lived up right in the Arctic Circle. And he had been in my dreams for about 12 years. And it never occurred to me that he was a real human being. I just had him down as a really helpful dream archetype. And through a whole set of like really crazy Castaneda-like experiences, I ended up meeting him. And meeting him, who I knew so well, I knew his house really well, I knew the environment so well, because I'd spent so much time there in my imagination. And so when I actually met him, and on his land, in this house with this beautiful pile of reindeer antlers and a little altar made of round stones, I was like, I know this. I'd been here so many times. And in a way, it was like a final nail in the coffin of um, rationality being the only thing I can trust. And, to be clear, I think rationality is very important. Um, but it's it's important in the right time, in the right place. We need to be rational about all kinds of things. And it's a good grounding to open our awareness to, we call it the imaginal world because it doesn't require belief. It just requires an openness to the power of our imagination. And the imaginal world is a very useful term for the non-physical part of life. And, um, I think for most people who find their way into shamanic practice through indigenous practices, that there's a there's a lot of challenges with that. If you're taking a lot of plant medicine or um, and you don't have enough ground in your physical presence, if you've not done your biographical work to understand that your history, that your biographical experience is with you. And of course, your ancestral experience is part of you. And if you don't do that work, then, as we were sharing a little bit before we came on, we end up with a lot of spiritual bypassing and which is not helpful. And it's not real. And it kind of gives shamanism a bad name, that, shamanism is all about how many plants you can get down your neck and how many very far out experiences you can have. Whereas indigenous people, when they're working with plants in that way, they work to have a vision. And when they receive their vision, they spend the next 10 years of their life making that vision real. Like, make it real. And, we often talk about the vision junkies in our culture, like, jumping from one amazing, very far out vision to another. But having the vision itself, though it's impressive, it doesn't change anything. It just gives us a story to share in the next circle we're in, but it doesn't change anything. And our work and, shamanism in itself has always been deeply practical until recently. Shamanism was about how we live in connection with the seasons, in connection with community, in connection with our ancestors, in awareness of our descendants, whether we have our own children or not, our collective descendants. So, for myself and Susanna, who's my wife, who we've developed our work with over the past 40 years, it's all about how do we discover really what matters to us? Like what's the guiding principles of our life, and how can we put those in the driving seat of our lives in terms of who we are and what we contribute? Because that's the other great, universal rule in shamanism, is this very simple word, reciprocity. That life gives us so much, and it's our job to find what's our contribution, what we give back to life. And so our work is really focused on transform your past, but by embracing it and discovering how it's affecting you in the present and making it into medicine, which is, it's the artistry of shamanism, is to turn your past into a strong hand at your back, but not by ignoring it and not by pretending, but by finding the resources that are available that you're actually made from, in order to be able to change the meaning that you're making from your past. And that's a process. It's like, you know, we talk about life as being the great creative project of your life. Like, what is it you're wanting to create? What do you want to be part of? What do you want to pass on? And so all of our work with indigenous practices, all the shamans we work with, they all said exactly the same thing to us. You know, you're a Jewish man born in Liverpool. You're not an Amazonian shaman. You never will be. And nor should you want to be. That your job is to take your experience that you have with us and translate it into something that is useful, relevant, and real for the land where you live and the people that you're working with. And that's what movement medicine is. Movement medicine is our translation. And, it's not just working with what we receive, but from them, we also received in vision very, very clear guidance about what is the work that's needed in this time for our people. And so the ceremonies we do are really rooted in embodied, rhythmic, breathing presence to dance deep enough that you can become this beautiful shamanic phrase of a hollow bone, and to become like a channel for your medicine, for your guidance, to get in touch with your guiding star, your really the deep embodied heartfelt sense of who you are and what matters to you, and therefore how you want to step by step live from that. Yeah.
God, I want to cover somatic understanding through movement of emotional states and how shamanic practices enable that. Then very much want to go, because it's very important what you said about the integration of our past as the hand on our back that supports us, as opposed to ignore your past or you can remove your past. I just need to go back to a comment about rationalism and imaginal, because I think of imaginal as birth, like the presence of potential and birth, like imaginal cells in obviously
Yes.
when things are transforming into butterflies and that potential for rebirth. It is the most rational thing in the world to say that everything starts in the invisible world and ends up in the material world via usually emotions to thoughts, or vice versa, through to action to creation. But that is all an invisible process. The genesis of it is imaginal. So if you to peel back the layers of rationalism, it's rational to come to that conclusion because it's a fact. So it's funny that we have these things of, you said I had a vision of a man for 10 years before I met him, and some will be like, well, you need to go to a psych ward, Jacob. That's where you need to go, and you need to get some drugs and we'll medicate you, because you need to be stuck in traffic making your way to a job you hate. That's rational understanding of the world we live in. So it's very funny how we frame these things.
Well, I feel for me that I like what Ken Wilber said about there is that form of rationale that you're talking about is to do with the dominant story of the culture. But to be rational also just means to have a consensual reality that's up and that's down, more or less, or that the floor I'm sitting on is solid, even though it's made of emptiness, even though scientifically we start to understand that a physical body is mostly empty space. Nevertheless, if I put my hand out to you and we were in the same room and we touched, we would feel bone and muscle, and yes, we might feel energy as well. And so for me, the importance of the rational world is simply to have a consensual language rather than a story that is fixed. And I think that's really, because as you beautifully said, things begin in the imaginal world. Like everything I can see that's human made began as a dream. And
Yeah.
the fact that you're in Australia and I'm in England right
Yeah,
now,
it's crazy when you
talking
think
through
about it.
a
Yeah.
piece of aluminium and and
Yeah, it's
goodness knows
silica.
what.
Yeah.
Yeah, silica is unbelievable. That's an amazing um, physical manifestation of a dream. And this is
Yes.
certainly what we learn from indigenous people as well, exactly that once something has been dreamt, if you are prepared to do the physical work to make that dream a physical reality, so it will be. And for me, that's very important because especially in times where it feels like there's a lot of overwhelm and a lot of challenge, and that spirituality for many people is more of an escape route
Mm.
than a desire to engage and make change. Um, it feels very, very important to me that we are able to link that vision space to the physical world. And, that's again what shamans always did in the old times. They had a foot in both worlds. They were very much here in the relationship with nature and the natural world and the natural cycle of living and dying and the seasons and the women's cycles and the men's cycles. This was all very much embodied, but they also had a foot in the world of dream,
Mm.
and that as a place of guidance, as a place of, well, we need to go hunting. Where are the buffalo? So we can find out in our dreams. And
Yeah.
if we think about that in modern terms, like what is it we need to live well? And what's the dream that guides us to live well and to find our place and to evolve as a species? Um, yeah, shamanism is a lot about that sense of evolution. Like we're part of an evolving dream. And what's your role to play in there?
Mm.
Yeah, so I hope that makes sense.
No, it does. I'm just trying to frame the question around that to
Mm,
which I think I, I want to bring it to this embodiment piece and what that looks like to you for people to embody
mm,
these principles in their lives in
mhm.
in a westernized, built up
Yeah,
complex, for example. And
yeah,
I think of then rationalism again and things beginning as dreams. Just as you said, you can get insight junkies. So you'll get or vision junkies. So people will, and we all know people like this, they have this brilliant idea. It is actually a brilliant idea, but
yeah,
then they fall down at the implementation of embodiment of just the practice of waking up every day with a rational, clear mind and applying basic step by step to manifest. Because that's the reality we live in. Things,
yeah,
despite all the courses trying to sell you the next manifestation course, unless you
yeah.
got a rich relative who dies who,
Right.
who you don't know about. In my
Yeah,
experience, things take time to build. It's just the nature of
yeah,
reality, and there's
yeah,
actually a lot of beauty in that process of building. You learn a lot about yourself, and it's teaching you. That's the whole point: is you're learning lessons. To go on
yeah.
this scavenger hunt for food takes time and effort. You can't just order an
Absolutely.
Uber, or you're going to
Yeah,
be anyway.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
another wormhole. So I guess the question then around that is, let's say you have your higher purpose and you've done that work and you've had a vision of, that's why people are chasing this state change. They want that vision for what is my life's
yeah,
meaning. And you
yeah,
get that. So you've gone to that step where you at least have an inkling of what that is. Where
yeah,
then does shamanic practices come in to begin to ground that into the cells in your body to know that you can do it and stick with
yeah.
it?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, for us, movement practice, which means beginning the day by bringing the focus of our attention back to the physical sensation of being in a body. And, this beautiful word that came out of neuroscience, interoception, which means
Mm.
the capacity to perceive and give language to what the sensation is that's happening inside the physical body. And so to land in the morning, like to make that bridge from sleeping dreaming to what some of our teachers used to call the waking dream. And the waking dream needs to be rooted in the body. So how to do that? Put on some, some good music and take your attention through your body. So our number one basic practice is called awakening the dancer. And that basically means I'm putting the focus of my attention through each part of the body whilst I'm breathing and being moved by a good rhythm. So it's not about like how good is my dance and how good do I look, and it's simply about presence in movement. So that's like the ground. And once I'm there in my ground and I'm aware then of four directions, and the reason why shamanism always works with four directions is because if you know where the four directions are, then you know where the center is, which is here, right inside you in your backbone. And so we have this phrase, I'm dancing at the center of my circle, aware of four directions, aware of four elements, aware of roots, trunk, and branches. So this is our basic practice. Awakening the dancer, the tree of life, the four elements. And once we're awake in that sense of presence and relationship with something greater than us, because although my body is made of earth, your body is made of earth, it lives from solar power. We know it's roughly 65% water, and we know that if we stop breathing, that's the end of it. So we know we are elemental beings. At the same time, though we are made from those elements, they exist outside us as a greater power. So the earth of my body in relationship to the body of earth gives me grounding, gives me the memory of not holding everything myself, but letting myself, let my weight and the weight of my body, my feelings, my thoughts be held by the living earth underneath me as I'm moving to rhythm. And moving to rhythm is very helpful because it helps us to be able to focus the mind, because the biggest problem we have is distraction. We're very quickly distracted. So this is practice. So once I'm present, then I'm making space for that vision as it exists in my body. I've had the vision. Maybe I've had an amazing, as you said, like a brilliant idea. So then I'm remembering it in my body and I'm sensing it in my body, that presence, that aliveness, the excitement I feel about that idea. And then from that place, I'm just asking myself, what's the step that I can take today that's congruent, that's moving me in the direction of that vision? And we say in our work every day, small steps in the direction of your dream with the occasional quantum leap. Because every now and again, things align and suddenly the door opens and you feel like, you're in this synchronized dance with a greater power, and suddenly you've got easy. But things get a little easier. But we talk about it like this. If you have a vision, then think about it like this. The vision exists in the imaginal world, but you want to bring it here. So imagine you get into a shallow depth swimming pool. Let's say it's up to your chest. So if you're going to walk in that water, you can feel the resistance. It's effort to walk in that water. But you're going to walk, and you're going to walk around the edge of that swimming pool. And maybe as you're doing that, you're telling a few people, you're sharing that vision. Maybe you're finding people that share that vision. And, my wife's father used to say, it's great what you can do alone, but you can do a hell of a lot more together, much more than you can imagine. So let's say you get 2 or 3 friends or people who share that vision. So they get in the water with you and they're walking alongside you. That if you keep walking around the edge of that swimming pool, you're going to create a current. And at some point, and I've done this lots of times with groups of people, and it's such an amazing feeling when suddenly that current is behind you. It's caught up with you. But it's through your effort that that current has caught up with you. And suddenly it feels like you're being carried. And that's the difference between what we, in our work, we say the difference between adulthood and maturity. Adulthood is a lot about effort. And, you know, we're made to make effort. Our bodies love to be used, and our minds and our hearts love to be used. And, you know, for an adult, like making effort, it's not about pushing all the time, but not to be afraid of effort. I'll tell you just one little story because it's funny. Just as you asked that question, a message arrived from one of our dear friends in the Amazon who's called Marco. And he's a father of 2 kids. But when he was 13 or 14, he had a vision that he should become a pilot for his people. He was living deep in the Amazon rainforest. And I can tell you, for a 13 or 14-year-old Achua young man living in the Ecuadorian Amazon, the journey from having a vision of becoming a pilot that's useful for your community and making that happen ain't easy. And, you know, he told his mother and he told his father, normally you would only share a vision with 1 or 2 people who you're close to. And you don't share it until it's happened. And then you tell people. I had this vision when I was 14. Now I'm 21. I'm inside that vision. So through a whole series of extraordinary effort that he had to make, his father, he was lucky he had a father who believed in him, his mother, who also believed in him. He became a pilot for his people. And when he told us this story, he said, there's one other thing I want to tell you. Once I had my license and I was flying these small planes for the communities in the Amazon. We had an emergency call from a village one time. And so I took off and I went to that place. And it turned out that the emergency call was my mother. And I put her in the aeroplane and I was flying her to Shell, which is the little town, the border town on the edge of the forest. And sadly, when we got there, it was raining very hard, so we couldn't land. So we had to circle for ages. And my mother was sat behind me and she said, this was the vision you had, wasn't it, my son? That you would help. And I'm so glad that I get to be here for this manifestation of your vision and that I got to benefit from that. And eventually they landed and she went to the hospital. But it's a beautiful story.
That's gorgeous.
That like this, like get in the swimming pool. Life gives you resistance to make you strong. You know, no, it's not usual that you have a vision and that the doors just swing wide open and say, and you know, here's everything you need to make it happen. In my experience and the experience of, it happens occasionally. Some people, I don't know, maybe they've just got great karma. God knows. Maybe, you know, who knows? But for most people, you have to get in the swimming pool. You have to create a current. You have to use your effort, and life will give you those challenges. In shamanism, we call those challenges that life gives you, we call them allies, because they're there to make you strong. They're there to help you focus. They're there also to help you adapt sometimes. Like, this vision is clear and true, but I can see through this challenge that, there's a little adaptation here that's going to make that dream even better. And if we know that and we support each other in that awareness, we're going to have a lot more people um, bringing their visions into the world in a good way. And, I think there's a danger these days of, if things don't happen easily, well, it's too much for me. It's overwhelming. Uh, we don't, we're not living in situations where we have that balance of kindness and support, and the kind of support that you need to meet the challenges on your road, which is sometimes, a hug and like just collapsing in a bunch of tears because it's so hard. That's all good. But sometimes also the support we need is a strong, firm hand at our back saying, come on, get up. You can do this. Come on. You've got the strength inside you. You can do this. So a lot of, which in a way is a bridge to what you talked about working with the past and why the past matters in the present.
Let's talk to that, because I think it's fundamental and it's misunderstood. I just want to go back quickly to that idea though of challenge, and it's
Yeah.
often misunderstood. I don't like using this word, but let's say manifestation circles, where people talk about life should be easy and you should go with the flow and you're in coherence and it's all rainbows and butterflies. I think
Yeah.
it's a misunderstanding of what life is from the perspective, because you basically said exactly, you articulated it beautifully. It's very much, it's your perspective on what the challenges are doing. If you're viewing challenges, or well, this should be easy, everything should be easy, and why am I getting what I want, as opposed to I'm growing stronger and I'm learning from
Yeah.
these challenges. And I'm
Yeah.
so clear in my vision that nothing's going to stop me, but these are things that are clearly, I need to, everything I now, and I'm not to bring it to myself, but when I have things that come up, I go to, well, this is preparing me because I'm obviously not yet adapted in this area. To do the bigger things, I need to learn all these smaller things and become very strong to be strong enough
Yeah.
to support these bigger things. Because if I
Yeah.
could do the bigger things, then they would have already been here, but clearly I'm missing steps. And it
Yeah.
totally changes your relationship to these things, to where they're not actually stressing you out, making you sad. They're just, it's on the path. It's on the path.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And a certain amount of, for like a healthy human heart will grieve from time to time because
Oh, for
life has loss in it.
sure.
And,
Yeah.
and a healthy human heart needs stress, like a certain kind of, not all the time. The problem is when it's all the time and we don't know how to calm down our nervous system and we're just all the time at, high alert. That has a cost for sure. But a certain amount of stress and effort and challenge, yeah, absolutely. And a certain amount of um like healthy emotion. We were always taught that emotion means energy in motion.
Yeah.
It's not. And the problem is that we feel something and we feel we have to have a story that justifies our emotion. And, we practice quite a lot in our work, just like let the body move as if it were afraid. I'm not trying to make myself afraid. I'm just practicing the 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 vocabulary of movement that allows fear not to get stuck like in frozen shapes, but just moves like an animal. Like if you watch a prey animal, like if it's had fear to deal with,
Yeah.
it will do all of its things to try to survive. It will run, it will freeze, it will and eventually it will melt, and then what it will do is find a safe place and shake like crazy, like shake the body,
Yeah.
shake all of that adrenaline loose. And again, for most humans in the modern world, we have this build up of emotion that doesn't have a channel. And then it becomes problematic. We become, you
Sick.
know, yeah, sick, or we become like yeah, mentally sick, emotionally sick, physically sick, all of these things. Yeah. So emotion matters a great deal. Yeah.
We are going to go to integrating the past, but I do want to quickly say on that movement piece, because it's something I've been exploring this year, and I can't believe I intuitively knew it, but the resistance to me, it's a static dance, and the resistance to me to go into this is all the stories I have about things like the prerequisites for me to dance in public are alcohol
Yeah.
or drugs, because it's an incredibly vulnerable state. Like people, you can tell a lot by the way someone dances. You can almost tell everything by the way someone's holding their body and their resistance to life or their fluidity toward things. So it's a vulnerable
Yeah.
state. But my God, that stuck emotion, these things that I couldn't get out through all these other practices, all like meditation, it's all almost theoretical. But when you just move the body to the point of forgetting,
Yeah.
I remember waking up after the first one where it was probably the third time I went where I was finally just releasing, like, it's
Yeah.
fine. But I
Yeah.
woke up feeling like I'd had uh, tons of emotional baggage removed from my shoulders from an hour and
Yeah.
a half of dancing. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you described that so beautifully, like the resistance that, and that resistance is usually more true for guys than it is for
Guys,
women.
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Um, you
guys,
know,
that trope, I don't
it's,
dance.
I don't dance, and I don't want to look like a fool. I don't, I
Yeah.
can't dance. And I remember the first five rhythms thing I went to with Gabrielle Roth in
Uh,
1988. Um, and it was called Five Rhythms Ecstatic Dance at the time, and like through Gabrielle. And I was there in this room with people all in their leotards, all stretching. And I felt so uncomfortable in that room. I was like, what the hell am I doing here? I was stood near the door, like just thinking
yeah.
there must be a way I can get out of this. But what Gabrielle did, and she was brilliant at this. Within 20 minutes, she enabled me to shift the focus of my attention from thinking about being self-conscious and worrying about what I look like and, what people would think. And did I look like a fool? And should I, is my dance good or not good? Or is it, this is ridiculous. What am I doing? Like, I don't know how to do this. She was able, like, which is basically all going round here in the gray matter. And like you said, these are things that we learn very early on in life, not to be comfortable in our bodies, not to be comfortable in the way that we move, in the way that we walk. And education sits us down for hours every day.
Mm.
And it's not, even sport can be rigidified to the point of, yeah. So we carry all of this energy that really needs to move. And like you said, if you can if you can find the courage to just get over that thing. And what Gabrielle did was she just said, I understand all that's going on, but just put your attention in the body listening to rhythm. And don't try to move. Let the rhythm move your body. Simple instruction. And within 20 minutes, I was astonished, like how much creativity there was in my body. Not here. I wasn't
Mm.
thinking about what moves might be creative. I was simply letting myself be moved by rhythm. And I love it that ecstatic dance has become so popular. When we started, there was no such thing in 1989. Like people
Yeah,
were like,
that.
"What are you? Five
Yeah.
rhythms, ecstatic dance? Like what for healing? What the hell are you talking about?" But over nearly 40 years now of putting that work out, and movement medicine is there's a difference between movement medicine and ecstatic dance. And ecstatic dance is a wonderful way in. It's a
Mm.
really like a it's an easy space to go, and where in a way, as long as you can get over that um, fear of what people might think, and very I know it's very welcoming, very warm, and there are fairly clear things about what's okay and what's not okay in a space like that. So it's safe enough. And then movement medicine is actually, we're engaging everyone's imagination through movement. So there's a lot more specific guidance in movement medicine practice. And so it gives you practices that you can then work with on a day-to-day basis. It gives you ways of how do you work with the past in movement. And we've developed all these extraordinary shamanic tools that happen through movement, and like step by step building up your resources so that you can visit the experiences from your past, not to identify with them, not to re-experience them. Like, I'm not going to step back into my past just to feel what it was like the first time. If it was something traumatic, it was bad enough the first time. I don't want to experience it in the same way again. What I want is to bring the resources I have now to that place and time, and to lend the resources I have now to the child I was, or to the teenager I was, or to the trauma I experienced. Lend the free movement I have now and the relationship with being able to express emotion on behalf of that one in the past. And what that does is, it doesn't change what happened, but it changes the memory, and it changes the meaning that I can make from it. And more than that, if it's a serious moment of trauma, and, we have to be honest, there is a lot of genuine trauma in the human species right now, because we haven't had the ways of being able to release that. Sometimes it's our own, sometimes it's inherited from our ancestors. But the good news about that is that in our movement medicine work, and this comes from many indigenous practices, everything, no exception, that exists in your past is potential medicine. That means personal power for you in the present. Everything, every moment. And so to throw it away is like throwing away the raw material that life has given you with which to create, or even to attempt to throw it away or to ignore it. That is raw material. And one of the great phrases that Gabrielle Roth passed on to us was, basically, we all have it within us to transform our suffering into art, into the art of living. And so to do that through movement, to do it as a dancer, and I don't mean a dancer on stage, I mean somebody who knows how to let go in movement, knows how to remember this body as earth, to remember it as sunlight, to remember that if I am 65% water, if that is a physical scientific fact, then if I identify with that part of me that's water, I can bring fluidity to different situations. I can bring depth, I can bring mist, I can bring a crashing wave, that because my body knows how to move that. So sometimes there are situations in the past that need a lot of water to wash through it, to cleanse, to purify, to release what was in that story. And that creates space. And again, in shamanic healing, it's not enough just to have a catharsis or to release. If you imagine, the past is like a vegetable garden. So I go in there with my shovel and my compost, and I go there with my rake, and it's full of weeds. It's full of all kinds there's no space to grow anything. So I have to get the shovel out, and I start to clean up and to empty the weeds and maybe 4 hours later, I've got some space in that vegetable bed. And then if I then leave and do nothing for 4 weeks, when I come back to it, it's going to be just like it was 4 hours ago. It's going to grow. Everything that I removed is just going to come back. So what do I need to do? I need to intentionally plant something there that I want to grow. And that's what we call soul retrieval. It's that. It's the quality of our being that wasn't able to land, or we became separated from through something that we didn't have the resources or the safety to deal with at the time, because we were kids or because we were young teenagers. And the shit that happens in our life is all potential compost, all of it.
Mm.
And the more we're able to recognize that and learn how to carry the resources we have now back to those experiences that we lived, and to dance there, to dance the shit out of that story, like to give expression to what needs expression, to give words, to give shape, to move on behalf of that one that experienced that. And not just on behalf of the I that was there, but on behalf of that system that created that challenge, that trauma, that difficulty. Then slowly you adjust the balance of power inside you, from being somebody who's overwhelmed and entirely shaped by their past, to somebody who is right here and is taking hold of that raw material and creating something that aligns with what really matters to me in my life. And then that resource becomes that strong hand at your back saying, yes, you can, and you will, and you are. Yeah.
Jakob, I'm very conscious of your time, and you've beautifully answered the necessity for integrating our past, and all flowers grow from shit. Like, that's quite literally the way of the earth. Like,
Yeah.
all decay ends up as where life grows from. And
Yeah.
what's that beautiful line? Like, the greater the pain, the greater the compassion, or something like
Yeah.
the big. And I'm not justifying. I know there's things which are unimaginable to happen to people, and
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not glossing over any of that. But
Yeah.
certainly the ability to transform that pain into an understanding of the same level of compassion for what human beings go through
Yeah.
uh, is the flower that I see of these
Yeah.
experiences, and the necessity for integration. In a time when, and we discussed this before we started, in a lot of New Age movements there, or even in Eastern traditions, confusing Neo-Avanta traditions of saying, I'm not associating with anything, of saying you're not this, you're not that.
Yeah.
You're only present now, and your past is not important. Maybe I'm doing it as a slight disservice. Maybe to the soul, the past isn't important, maybe on some levels, but we're here to have this human experience, embodied in a body, to precisely do this work of integrating things that have happened to us, not only in this life, but as you mentioned, we know that, I think there's a discovered in science, there's 3 generations that the cells store memory. God knows, maybe it's in the infinity of all our ancestors are stored in the bloodline, and then not to mention past lives.
Yeah.
So this work is rich and fertile ground for creating the art. So why would you turn your back and pretend it's something you
Yeah.
can just ignore and move on with your life, when every moment of our life is dictated by our past?
Well, I think it's really important what you're saying in terms of, the potential of suffering is compassion. And if somebody who has really suffered, or, there's been a lot of really interesting research that the difference between somebody who's suffered a lot, who becomes a compassionate, active, generous, making a difference human being in their adulthood, and somebody who is destroyed by it. The difference
That's the difference.
apparently is it's just one or two people who are able to see that person in their suffering. Even if they can't change their suffering in any way, they know that they're being seen and loved in it. So I think, where we've come to in our understanding of that is we can do that for anyone at any time. Like if we meet somebody who's suffered, it again, like the other danger of saying, oh well, it's nothing, it's just your past. The other danger is of saying, well, it doesn't matter, get over it. Come on, you can just be a flower from it. That source of suffering is just going to make you into a flower.
You don't want to hear that at the time.
It's the last thing you want to hear, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it does get said. So what's needed for that transformation of suffering into compassion to become flowers is support, is resource. And it doesn't take that much support and resource to get somebody moving in a direction where that can grow. And that's the thing. And anyone can find that. It is available. It's available in life. And I know, like you said, it's hard if the lenses you're wearing are entirely rooted in your expectations from your past. It's hard to see a way forward. And sometimes then we just need a moment of good fortune or a moment of courage to say, well, for instance, I'm going to get on that dance floor. It might just help. It might just be the thing that, okay, I feel really self-conscious, but okay, I'm going to give it a go because, I need something. I recognize I need something. And then you find some kind of sense of community, like the people who are traveling not exactly in the same direction, but close enough.
Yeah.
And so community matters as well. And there are lots of things that support that movement. And it's not that those Eastern traditions are wrong. It's just those Eastern traditions, like sit on a cushion and meditate and don't be attached to anything. They're born out of very physical cultures. They're born out of people who are working in the field all day.
That was the end result. That wasn't the starting point. Yeah, yoga,
Exactly.
the whole point of yoga was to prepare you for meditation.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Exactly. And so we need to find our way back to those basics, and in terms of relationship with the intelligence of the physical body, which is made up of we call it the unbroken intelligence of life that's in the earth, that's in sunlight, that's in water, that's in air, and therefore that we are made from, because we're elemental beings. And if we can get back to that, shifting the balance of power, as I said before, inside us between I am just totally the result of my past to I am made of the unbroken intelligence of life. And with that, I'm going to embrace my past and make it strength in my presence in order to bring the vision that matters to me to this world and to offer it and to play my part. In when somebody says, what's the point of movement medicine to me? I say it's three things. One is stand up, like body, heart, mind. Stand up inside yourself. Bring these three intelligences together so that you can feel that place of, I'm standing up inside my experience. The second one is grow up. And not as a telling off, like you should grow up, but rather let's grow up like a tree grows up. And that growing up means taking responsibility for our past so that it gives us strength in our present so that we can be part of creating a better future for people on earth, like for this earth, for all the beings of earth. And so that's stand up, grow up. And this is, we call that the arc of time, the past, the present, the future. Stand up is vertical. Grow up is like this, horizontal. And then finally, play your part. Do what you're here for to the best of your ability. Like find out what's yours to give and give it. And that's about fulfillment. That's the fulfillment of who you are and the sense of being part of a bigger dream. And that in itself might lead to that place of realization, or the direct experience or the direct knowledge of who you are and what you are in this world. And it's not a linear process. It's a spiralic journey, and all of our work continues to take people through body, heart, mind, past, present, future, fulfillment, interconnection, realization, through all what we call the 5 dimensions of relationship, which is your relationship with yourself, these relationships one-to-one, how you are in those, your relationship and sense of belonging in community, your relationship with the imaginal world, and finally your relationship with the mystery of life itself. And basically in about 4 or 5 nutshells, that's the shamanic practice that we are bringing into the world, and that's embodied, that embraces the past, the present, and the future, and invites people to really be who they are and give what they've got.
Jakob, that's absolutely beautiful, and oh God, I haven't heard anyone describe a practice so articulately and beautifully. I love the mention of the spiral too, because I think a lot of people think a lot of trouble comes from this idea of a linear path and you needing to be here, and these are all the stops, and it's a straight forward ahead to my dreams.
Yeah.
Everything in our bodies, our breath spirals into our lungs, our heart pumps spirals of blood through our system. We're spiraling beings. We're certain, as long as we're in the right spiral, it's all fine that we're spinning and it's all one.
Yeah.
I don't want to use language like ascension, but everything is consistently spiraling the past, the future, the present, and us as beings.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the nature of life. And it's when you know that, sometimes when it feels like life is taking you further and further away from your dreams, you actually recognize that, no, I just need to go in this direction for a while, pick this up,
circle.
And that will bring me back to where I'm headed. But it's certainly not in my experience a straight line in any way.
Well, that's the mystery.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sometimes you're like, maybe just one bloody straight road. Just give me one straight road. Let me get that, and then we can spiral a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to mention before? Look, I could talk to you for another 2 hours, and I'd love to do another conversation with you, because I've really enjoyed listening to you talk, and I absolutely need to come and do a workshop at some point. But is there anything? How do people find your work? What you have coming up?
Yeah, so we schoolofmovementmedicine.com you'll find a full description, not just of our work, but all the teachers we've trained and where they are, including in Australia and all around the world. So that's a good place. We also have what's called the Movement Medicine Study Hub, which is our online community, which is an extraordinary resort, like library of resource. It's very accessible. We offer online ceremonies once every 6 weeks following the cycle of the year. But you can find, and then there's also, Susanna and I wrote Movement Medicine. I've written 2 books myself, Jaguar in the Body, Butterfly in the Heart, which is more my story of initiation. And then the other book is called Shaman, which is more a practical pathway to embodied shamanism for the modern world, and through movement medicine. And that's, yeah, those are all available on Audible and on Amazon, wherever you can find good books. So yeah, by all means, look us up. We're on Instagram. Yeah, it's all happening.
So I will put that in the show notes for everyone to access
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you for your time today. Safe travels.
Thank you.
For your upcoming trips, and
Yeah.
I very much hope to speak to you again.
Yeah, and a real pleasure to meet you, Paul. And blessings to you and your work, and
Thank you.
also to all your listeners. I hope that this conversation opens a little window in some ways that's useful. And yeah, I really appreciate your time too. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.